if you really want your money back, real estate, it's the final frontier where the average person has a legitimate shot at creating real wealth.
Keep preaching, Matt, because I definitely agree with that. And that's a mindset shift that we don't need to be doing that. We shouldn't be doing that.
The secret to passive income is not in the property, it's in the management of the property.
On this podcast, we're talking a lot about how to grow your business, how to tap into a new audience we call Liberty Spenders. And so we're speaking a lot to entrepreneurs or people that are wanting to start a business or already have one and are looking for ideas on how to expand. And I know for so many entrepreneurs and people that we talk with, they're looking for how do I hedge against my business? What can I do to protect myself? I'm all in with my company. But of course, we've interviewed people talking about their investments and retirement strategies and all kinds of things that touch really every American, but also business owner specifically. And today I'm excited because we're going to dive into that topic as well for people that want to invest in real estate. And you might be like Curt and I, where you already do. We do some. We have some rental properties. We have some things we've been doing on our 15-year real estate journey. But we're going to interview someone today who helps people with just that very thing. So listen up if you're interested in how to diversify or you're wondering about strategies beyond just building your own business and how you can protect your family for the long term.
I'm looking forward to it too.
Hello, and welcome to the Liberty Spenders podcast. We are Curt and Kristen Luthart, your hosts and co-founders of the Prosper Group, an agency that's helped raise over $500 million and help elect over 100 members of Congress, 15 governors, 15 U.S. senators, and 1 president. And now, in addition to helping political candidates get elected, we're helping your business get elected by answering this question. What if you could exponentially grow your business by tapping into a lucrative and engaged audience that we call Liberty Spenders? Now, we've identified 76.5 million of them, and they're looking to buy from businesses and brands that align with their values. To learn more about that, you can get access to our new best-selling book at libertyspenders.com/free.
Our guest today is Matt Theriault, and I'm excited to introduce him, CEO and founder of Epic Real Estate and a Desert Storm Marine vet, and, as I learned from reading his book, a record executive, which we're definitely going to ask about. Since 2003, he's built a hefty real estate portfolio without his own cash or credit, simplifying the complex to help other people succeed. He's driven to master passive income. Matt now invests, writes, and teaches creative strategies to break free from traditional financial traps. 7 months ago, he published a book called Escape. I hope this is in the right camera angle. We'll see. Crushing conventional wisdom with real estate investing. He debunks myths and offers a roadmap to financial freedom for all with the right mindset. Matt, it's great to have you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I was so intrigued. There are certain things, careers, jobs that I think are super cool. And so I'm reading your book, expecting to learn about real estate, and a couple paragraphs in, I learn about your journey from creating a successful record label, and then when that went under, having to work in the grocery store. But I want to talk about the record label thing, because that sounds super cool. Were you
much more exciting than the grocery store?
Yeah. Do you go to college to start a record label? How does that happen?
No, it was totally, an accident, really. I can go all the way back. I was born and raised in Orange County, California. And I went to school in high school in Irvine. And it's predominantly white, very much the era of the yuppie. So I was in musical theater in my freshman year, and we were doing Flashdance was the big production. And for the giant finale, they needed break dancers. And so our teacher, she kind of went, quote unquote, to the other side of the tracks to try and recruit a student from another school. But instead of him being in the performance, he came over and he taught me and the only other boy in the group how to break dance for this finale thing. And he brought this big giant radio. You know what those look like. And this was 84, 83,
yeah,
84.
Boombox.
Totally. Yeah. They had other names for it, but they brought that over, and I was just fascinated by the music. The music just blew me away. It was something I'd never, ever, ever heard before. And that just kind of led me through an era of like, I gave up the dancing and what became a DJ. And then I bought a bunch of musical equipment, became a producer. Then I pressed records and went from store to store, selling them out of the trunk of my car. And then caught the attention of a distributor up in San Francisco. And he started buying my records by the thousands. And then that got the attention of EMI. And they said, hey, we love what you're doing. Can't believe you're doing this all out of the trunk of your car, but we'd love to give you a record a label deal. And they sent me a giant check, the most money I've ever seen before in my life. And that's how I got a record deal.
That's insane.
Yeah.
So you were doing your own, so you were making your own music.
Yeah. And I would take the little, they were DATs, digital audio tape. I'd take those down to the record plant, which we had like vinyl records. And I went and had them pressed, and it'd take about 4 or 5 days. I'd go pick up, I don't know, 500 to 1,000 at a time, put them in the trunk of my car and just go from store to store and sell them.
Oh my goodness. Talk about hustle.
Yeah. So did you eventually produce other people's records, or was it always your own music?
Yeah. Eventually, one thing that was really popular at the time was, these dance mix records where they'd put like the famous club DJ, and he would be like the star of the thing. And so, but then they'd go license music from other labels, and then the DJ would mix them all together. And that's how that worked. And so no one was doing that with hip hop. So I did it with hip hop. And so that was kind of like our claim to fame. And gosh, our first one was such a mega hit. So it was like you know what a mixtape is, but this was legal. Like we had licensed permission from all the labels to put it together, and we could put it in the major stores. And so we did a bunch of those. And then I had a couple of artists there later on too. Well,
that's going to be the title of the episode right now. Hip hop producer interviewed, right? That's cool. You're the first hip hop producer I've met, at least I think.
Of course, I can't hear anybody talking about learning to break dance without thinking about the Olympics, right? I'm sure you followed or saw
Ray
that.
Gun.
Yeah,
Ray Gun.
Yeah, the Australian. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's not what you were doing, right? You weren't doing the Ray Gun stuff or whatever.
Yeah, I wasn't nearly as good as her though. But that's exactly what I was doing 30 years previous though. 35 years before that.
Wow, that's insane.
So you produced these hip hop records, and then I in the book you're talking about the whole revolution of digital access really hurt the record industry.
Mm-hmm.
And so you found yourself working in a grocery store as your plan B. You called it the worst plan B ever, I think.
There wasn't even like a plan A. Like everything just kind of happened. Right? I mean, I didn't go to high school thinking I was going to own a record label. So when the digital download came along, Napster specifically, and then just people stopped going into music stores. And by this time, I was 33, 34 years old. And it was, I felt like at that time, half my life was gone. Like, what is a plan B? What's a plan B? I'm already doing plan A, and plan A is working.
Right.
And, but in 6 quick months, we were out of business, and the wife left and had to file bankruptcy, and went out to the real world and found out, I skipped all of school and everything. Didn't really have the credentials. The market told me I wasn't qualified for anything. So now I was like, okay, so what do I do? So I tried a bunch of different sales gigs, and, at that time, the grocery store union was on strike, and they were paying $21 an hour. And I was like, well, this is better than nothing. So that was my pause there at the grocery store.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's amazing. I think what you're saying is interesting here because, at 30 something, you do feel like I'm running out of time.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
To figure out what I'm doing here. And, for many people, that's when they really start the thing they're supposed to be doing. And for you, that was getting into real estate. And I read about your first deal you did. Like if no money down, made 26 grand. How did you get from, okay, I'm in the grocery store, running people's orders and bagging people's groceries to doing your first real estate deal?
Yeah. So I'd been there about 6 months, and then kind of woke up one day. I was like, whoa, no one's coming to my rescue, right? There was no shortage of people that were willing to let me cry on their shoulder, but no one was actually giving me any advice or direction or any help or anything like that. And there was one day that the grocery store manager, who we happened to be the same age, I was 34, he was 34, but he was the manager. I was still pushing shopping carts. And because we were the same age, we had a lot in common. And he could tell that I wasn't in good shape, kind of depressed. Because I just really missed my money. I mean, I made my millions before I was 30. And now I'm bagging groceries at 34. And, the check doesn't cover really anything. And so he said to me, he goes, Matt, and these words here, and I've said them a million times since. He goes, if you really want your money back, real estate, it's the final frontier where the average person has a legitimate shot at creating real wealth. And I was like, I've tried all these other things up to that point. I've tried selling it, just everything you can think of. I went through a bunch of little multi-level marketing companies and all of this kind of stuff. And I was like, well, I've searched all of those things, so it wasn't there. So maybe this is the final frontier. So I just took a bottle of wine home that night and went and started searching online and everything I could find real estate. And I found that I had an aunt that I hadn't seen in probably 15, 16 years. She was just 2 cities over. She'd been the number 1 real estate agent there for 20 something years. And so now I'm filled with liquid courage by the end of the search. And so I fired off an email and woke up to her reply in the morning. We had lunch that day, and within 24 hours, I was in real estate agent school. It happened that fast. And then, it took me a few years to figure out that, hey, this is where all the money's at. I think I'm sitting on the wrong side of the desk. I wasn't as a real estate agent. And I had a couple clients that were investors. And then I was like, I want to do what they're doing. So I stopped working for commissions, started working for profits. And that's kind of how the whole thing took off.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a, people's paths are never linear. It's the kind of grit you're talking about to keep trying that helps drive people to success. I am kind of curious, because this is something a lot of people face. So you're going through, my business failed. I'm doing the grocery store thing. I'm there trying to figure it out, and a couple of things I'm doing isn't working. What kind of kept you going? What was the thing that kept you? Kristen talks about it all the time. Resilient, right? During that time period,
making the transition from the grocery store to the real estate,
or from the fact that you were killing it in the music business, and now you got to find a new thing while you're working at the grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
And and as you described, not everything was working. Not anything was working. Mm-hmm. What kept you resilient during that time period?
I come from a family of civil servants, a lot of police officers in my family, a lot of fire department people, a lot of aerospace engineers working for McDonnell Douglas, those types of jobs. And I always had weird little jobs. Like I was a cart boy at the golf course, and I worked in a Chinese takeout restaurant, and I would just go work. And so I just had that type of, I guess, blue collar type ethic. But I had a taste of the good life, right? With real estate, or excuse me, with the music. And I to have not come from money to get money, then to lose it. There's a whole different experience there. And I think a whole different drive or inspiration for whatever is next, because now it's possible. Before that, I didn't know it was possible. I just thought, hey, you just get up and work for 40 years. And eventually you might, if you do it right, you get to retire. And so that's always been my thought, but without much thought. That was just like my conditioning. That was my life. It was my environment. But now I had a taste of a whole new environment, and I really wanted it back. And so it took me about 6 months to recover, though, from that whole letdown, because I blamed everybody and everything for where I was at that point in my life, because it wasn't fair. This damn Napster company, right? They just come along and they just give the music away for free. Like, I was just so bitter about that. Like, this wasn't supposed to happen. I'm 34. What am I supposed to do now? And it's so funny. 34 is so young at the time.
Right. Yeah.
I felt like it was the end of the world.
Yeah.
But I think that there was just that. I had a taste of it and I wanted it back.
Yeah. There's enough belief now in your head that you can do something. You can achieve something. You've been working at something, even if it was your big break and you didn't think you deserved it. You know what that's like. And for a lot of people, that's all they need. It's just enough or people that have had setbacks. Maybe they haven't gotten over it as quickly as you did. 6 months, not that long of a period of time. And for some people, maybe that big setback comes when they're older, and then they really take it even that much harder, right? Because now they really do feel like they have a shorter runway. And you just have to try to find a way to get back to that belief, get back to that place and remind yourself that you can. And remember a time when you did, and what did that feel like? And you can have it again. So I think, what you described, but there had to have been some kind of trigger. It sounds like maybe that conversation you had where there's enough of a trigger of, hey, this is the next place where you can do this. Something, because even when you took home that bottle of wine and decided to look for something or decided to reach out to the relative, something triggered in your head that, okay, I'm not going to wallow. I'm going to do something about this.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't get to that point, but the sooner you can, obviously, then you can change things. You can take action and you can change things.
Yeah. A lot of people would have never left the grocery store.
That's right.
Right. We've already.
They would have lived that old story.
Yeah.
Blame, and they would have lived it.
Well, you know what? I can't give myself that much credit for leaving the grocery store. What happened was the strike ended. And so the manager came to me and he said, you know what? You're a great employee. We'd love to keep you, but now we have to go back to the union rules and everybody starts at the bottom. And so I was going to go from the $21 strike rate to the bottom at $7 an hour. And, I was working 6 days a week. I'd taken all the overtime they would possibly give me, and that wasn't enough. And now you're going to cut it by 66%.
Yeah.
So I definitely was forced out the door.
Well, you had some external encouragement,
For sure.
External factors that, yeah.
Yeah. But
you should take some credit, though, because still, I think for some people, they get knocked down and they stay down for a while. And you just have to decide not to let that, take over your headspace.
Well, that's opened you up into a whole new world. And now not only have you, done a lot of deals yourself, but you're teaching people the real estate market. And it's such a fascinating, business. Chris and I own some real estate. We're a very small operation. But even for us, it can seem confusing what's going on with interest rates and banks, and should you do multifamily or single family homes? Should you do a strategy where you're buying and renovating? Should you buy stable? How do you take all of that, stuff that can seem so overwhelming and show somebody how to do what you did and get started?
Well, I broke it down just to 3 steps. You have to first find the deal, right? And then you have to take that deal and convert it into a contract. And then once you have the contract, then you have just to find how you're going to exit, how you're going to make money from it. So if you just kind of narrow it down to those 3 things, then it simplifies a whole lot. And regardless of what the asset class is, whether it's a single family home or a multifamily home or a storage facility or a mobile home park, that all those 3 steps exist. And so then you just decide, what on that exit strategy, how you're going to make your money. Do you want a nice big fat chunk all at once? Or do you want that to be a stream of money that can last forever? And so it can be it really is that simple.
Is there a thing that you think is super trendy in 2025 or an interesting strategy that, should be leading the way for a lot of folks?
Yeah, I think there's such a huge deficit in housing and the home builders because of what it costs to build a house these days. It's losing its appeal and they're losing their ability to make money. And if the interest rates are so high, then the people can't afford to pay them for the property so they can turn a profit. So there's already this huge deficit in housing compared to the population and the age that the population is hitting right now. And so the big trend is it's affordable housing. But I see this weird trend is people are starting to build just entire communities just to rent, right? They're not building them to resell them because they know that the demand is so high, meaning there's just a lot of people that are going to need those few houses that essentially, over time, over the next 10, 15 years, that's the ultimate job security. The client base is already built in. and everybody needs what you have. They need a roof over their head. They need shelter. So they're going to have to pay for it. Either they're going to have to buy it or they're going to have to rent it. And the way that it's looking right now is the affordability thing is so out of whack. And I don't think it's coming down. It's not going to come down significantly enough to make a giant difference across the entire nation. That I think the trend is to buy as much as you can and become a landlord. I really think that's where, it might go up and down in the short term. And, 6 months, Matt, that was stupid advice. But, I could have given you that advice in 2008 on the worst day just before Lehman Brothers went out of business. I said, buy everything you can today. And if it tanked the very next day like it did, if you look back, you're like, gosh, I wish I could go back that day and buy a house on that day. Because your house would be 2.5, 3 times what it was then. And that would have been like the worst day in history to have bought a house from most people's standards at that moment. So I think it's just going to continue to do that. So as far as the neat little, weird little trend, I see people on a smaller scale copying what the big institutions are doing because they're building these communities to rent. But buying land and putting 4 or 5 tiny houses on it, I see that as a unique little trend that I think I think that'll make money indefinitely, at least as long as we're alive.
Yeah. We see that in Indianapolis, not the tiny homes, but the, big institutions coming in and essentially developing rental communities or buying and into a typical community and then they're mostly rentals. The Indianapolis Star here just published an article on this. Something like half of homes in certain parts of the city are now owned by these kind of big out-of-state conglomerates and are being rented out.
Yeah.
So it's a really popular, to your point, very popular trend with the guys with the deep pockets.
They've run out of things to buy. I mean, if you take, I think it's the stat was BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street, those 3 major funds. And I might get the numbers wrong, but the point will be made. They own like 80% of the Fortune 500. Like those 3 companies own 80% of the Fortune 500. Like they ran out of things to buy. So they're buying houses now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, as a home buyer, you're often competing with those folks, but
totally.
But also to your point, I get what you're saying. It always makes sense to be buying. We were one of those people. We bought our first house not too long before the big crash. It was 2005. So right when everybody was still drunk with, everything was going to be wonderful.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We got one of those terrible loans that we, should never have probably been given. I mean,
we got it so easy.
Yeah, I know. We got a stated income, adjustable rate, interest only loan,
like the worst of the worst of the worst.
And I didn't even have a job at the time. I was in between jobs, and Kristen was working, and we still got it. But what's interesting is that home we bought, even in the height of when they were sort of appraising stuff way more than it was worth. We paid $210,000 for it. It was worth $145,000 in 2009 or whatever when it really bottomed out. And we'll sell it. We're actually selling it right now for $320, right? Mm-hmm. And so, still ends up being a great investment, even though we got into it at the worst possible time. Yeah. And we rented it out for the Delta for the last 15 years. We've rented it out, and the rents we get on it, I would feel guilty sometimes of charging that.
Yeah, that's got to be great. Like you really made it killing on the rent, right?
Yeah, it's a very desirable community, great neighbors, selling it to a wonderful family, and so you're absolutely right. Is there somebody? This may be an odd question, but it comes to mind. Because this is something Chris and I have been talking about. Is there somebody who shouldn't be buying real estate right now, or maybe should do it in a different way?
I think everybody should, as long as you don't expect it to be passive income and you're prepared for some emergencies.
There we go.
Amen. There we go. Thank you,
Matt. That is a solid answer. That is a solid answer.
Oh.
You've passed our test that you didn't know existed. But just the amount of people, who just, again, passive income, and they just think, yeah, I'm just going to invest this thing and sit back and watch it. And, as if everything's going to work out exactly the way you think, and you're not going to have problems with tenants, and you're not going to have things that need to be repaired, and you're not going to have somebody break. There's just a lot of contingencies and a lot of things. And some people aren't willing to be prepared for that, or have the slush fund built in that they need, or all the different things. And so, yes, very solid advice.
Yeah. You can manage those things. There's not another investment out there that buys itself.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Like you have to pay, you have to put your money in the stocks. You have to put your money in the crypto, or into your business or somebody else's business like that. But the real estate, it just, if you manage it, it pays for itself. It buys itself for you.
Yeah. I mean, to our credit, just a lot of the stuff we've had, we've just held it a long time. And, but that's just it's a different mindset. I think when you come in looking at it like that, or looking at it like, hey, this is a long-term business and I got to think about it this way, as opposed to everybody trying to get some quick hit. Not saying you can't do that. You can, but a lot of people need to be warned. It is just not that.
But if you
simple.
look at if you ask any investor that's been doing it for longer than, say, 20 years, and you ask, hey, if you were to do it all over again, what would you do differently? They'll all say the exact same thing. I wish I would have bought more and sold less. So even if it's painful during the process, in hindsight, damn it, I should have stuck it out. I should have endured. I should have just done it, right? And not bailed and quit when it got a little tough, because in hindsight, they all wish they would have done the same thing.
Hey, business owners, did you know there's 76.5 million faith-based and conservative consumers that are looking to support brands that align with their values?
That's a $5 trillion opportunity, and if you're not tapping into it, you're leaving money on the table. Our new book, Liberty Spenders, is your ultimate guide to reaching this influential audience using conviction-driven marketing.
That's right. We break down real-world strategies that successful brands are using right now to connect with this audience authentically, build trust, and drive long-term business growth.
So if you're truly serious about standing out in today's crowded market, grab your copy today on Amazon or visit libertyspenders.com. And don't miss out on this revolutionary strategy called conviction-driven marketing. We brushed on this before. There's a lot of different ways people make money on these transactions. I loved your kind of way of looking at it from like sort of a 3-step rubric, and there's a lot of different terminologies people would hear, seller financing, lease options, wholesaling. Have you done all of those things? What are the tactics you're kind of leaning into the most? What's the advice you would give somebody wanting to get into the business today?
Yeah, that's my primary strategy. Because when I got out of music and filed bankruptcy and got left with all the wife's debt and everything, like, I was unlendable. So the only way for me to get into real estate were these creative financing strategies. And I think it was the biggest blessing I'd ever have, even though it felt like a curse at the time. And so now, I've got money, I am lendable, but I still prefer not to use them because I can get much better rates and terms by negotiating directly with the seller. And they can typically make more money that way as well. So as long as rates stay up, I think there's 2 strategies specifically, one called subject to, where you take over the payments on an existing mortgage. Because why would I want to go get a 7% mortgage when the seller already has a 3.5%, right? And so that affords me, I'm going to have an easier payment, but it also allows me to give the seller a little bit more money for their property, right? And the second thing with the seller financing, the same thing. I can give them top dollar, like might have been on the market trying to sell traditionally for full value, and they're getting no takers because the rates have gone up and people can't afford it now, or the person I would want to live there can't afford it. And so I'll give you your asking price, but this is how we'll structure the loan terms so they can still get their price and I can still get my payment. We can both win. So those 2 strategies are really, I've always used them, but they're working now better than they ever have.
So are you then doing pretty heavy outreach? We own some real estate, so we get text messages and emails and postcards at our house. Is that the kind of is that also, are those all secretly coming from you?
Yeah, every one of them. But you deal off market because as an investor, if you go out and just hire a real estate agent and go out and shop in the retail market, first of all, you're going to pay full price, which is fine. That's what the house is worth. And real estate is still going to keep its wealth building promises to you if you buy it that way. But you will hit a limit because you're going to run out of down payments. You're going to hit your capacity with the banks, and then you won't be able to grow anymore. So you have to learn other ways to acquire the properties. And so the real estate agents, they're marketing direct to sellers all the time. And so we just do the same thing.
Yeah. I see people doing it because I'm the recipient of it.
Are you interested in selling your property? Is this the owner of the property at this address? Yeah.
Yes.
We're buying in all cash. Would you like to talk to us today?
Yeah.
I mean, I get them too. I got this one right here today, and I got this one. It's got a little picture of my house right there on the postcard. Did you get those?
Oh, wow. That's personalization right there.
Yeah, right. It says, "Is this your vacant home?" I was like, that house isn't vacant.
See, they're trying to get you to like respond. Hey, this isn't vacant. Oh, really? You have a renter in there? Oh,
so I want to circle back to the person who we talked about a little bit, who might be looking for a passive, like I want to be in real estate. Mm-hmm. I recognize that being an investor truly isn't passive. There might be somebody on this podcast who fits this description. That I want to be in real estate. I recognize it's not truly passive. I hate everything to do with tenants and, rehabs and construction people and everything. But I know it's such a good thing to be in. Like everything you said about real estate and it being such a solid investment and no other investment pays for itself. All of that's true, but I don't want to touch any of it. How would a person like that invest in real estate in your mind?
There's real estate investment trusts. So you can invest in it just like you would a mutual fund or something like that. But you don't get all the benefits. The thing that makes real estate such a wealth creator is it's got so many different profit centers. It's got the appreciation, it's got the cash flow, it's got the amortization, it's got the depreciation, all the tax benefits that come with it as being now classified as a business owner, because once you own a rental property, the IRS sees you as a business owner. So, and you're able just to borrow money to do it. Like there's no other asset class that allows the average person to do that. So by going into a trust, you give up on so much of that. So now you're just really kind of betting on the real estate market and the operator. And so that's kind of the same thing as if you just bought, any mutual fund. I guess there's not a whole lot of difference there. So if you're not, you can, all right. I'm going to suggest if you want to keep your hands off, then you would really want to develop the skill of managing property managers, right? So think of it as you're hiring somebody to watch over your assets, but they have to report to you. Think of yourself as the boss, right? Like this property manager works for me. And I tell everybody that the secret to passive income is not in the property, it's in the management of the property. And so we have, I think we have like 50 properties now. We've got up to 350 at one time. And so that's a lot of properties to manage. That can be a serious headache, and I wouldn't wish that on anybody. But we develop systems to where we just manage the property managers, and we have it reduced down to about 3 hours a month on just managing the people. So if you want all the benefits of real estate, that's probably where you want your focus to be. If you want to be completely passive and hands off, then the real estate investment trust is just as good as the Vanguard mutual fund.
We have been, and I won't go too far down this cow path of our own real estate journey, but we have been through a half a dozen property managers. And I thought if there's one business that needs reform, it's property management. I think we hired good people that, were trying, and all of them ended up in trouble. 2 of them went bankrupt. One of them just turned out was trying to make money by exploiting my tenants and not including us into the thing. Or they're good at one thing, but not the other. Like they collect rents okay, they get me money okay, but I can't trust them to do rehabs because their construction arm is kind of crappy. And so we struggled forever to try to manage. Finally, the last attempt was we'll just manage it ourselves because at least I know my interests are aligned, because our interests weren't aligned with our property managers because they're taking, a percentage of everything. So including maintenance sometimes. So they didn't have the same incentive to get jobs done cheap, right? Or they got 100% of the late fees, so they didn't have an incentive to make sure the people paid on time. When we took over from one of our property managers, our tenants would tell us what their rent was. We saw what their rent was in the lease, and what they were paying was completely different. Oh, well, how is this? Well, it's because the property manager snuck in a bunch of fees that they got to keep 100% of. And we're really exploiting our tenants so they could raise their margin. And so after 5 or 6 property managers, thought none of these people are any good.
Yeah. This is 15 years worth.
Yeah, maybe I'm just have bad luck with property managers. And you've got a system, though. Maybe that was probably part of what you talk about in your book here. But that was one of the most frustrating parts of our real estate journey.
The first step of that is just the awareness that the incentives between a landlord and an owner are not in alignment. Because when that property is performing really well for the landlord, that's the least amount of money that the property manager is making. And when it's a miserable experience for you, that's when the property manager is making all their money. So just by going in and having that awareness, we can fix a lot of things, because, people will go in with their house. They're looking for somebody to manage it, and they'll go in thinking they're being a good, business owner or operator, and they'll get the lease agreement or the management agreement. And then they'll start negotiating the management agreement. Like, you don't deserve 10%. I'm only going to pay you 8%. And you start grinding them down. And what you do unknowingly is you're building resentment with your property manager. And so my approach is, if I look back historically, where we probably pay an average between 9 and 11% on our property management fees on what's collected. But I'd gladly, in hindsight, I'd gladly give them 20% if everything just performed. Right. So, and they would have, so if you are compensating them and being that right type of property manager, your properties get fixed quickly. They get filled with the best tenants quickly, and you have a much better experience. And so that understanding that can change your experience entirely. Now, I'm not saying just go in and be a rollover and just pay them more money. I'm not saying that either, but that goes a long way. I wouldn't pay my property manager 20%, but you don't have to. But by paying them 10, 12% what they ask for, and then just letting them know that you're watching them rather than, sleeping on it and not talking to them for 6 months, that's when things can blow up on you. But if they know you're watching and you're paying, you'll find that your expenses will fall and your performance will increase.
Yeah, we've definitely learned a lot. And I think scale really helps too. So when you're starting out and you just only have a handful, it's just not the same service you're going to get when you can go to somebody who's got a professional operation doing this. And when you have enough scale, I think. And so I'm not obviously the expert that you are, but yes. But I think being able to get, so many doors under your belt where it's not like a hobby, where you can kind of look to that with the long-term strategy, I think also helps.
Yes.
Yeah. Curt got a little jaded. You're hearing.
Yes. Property managers. Yes. I think Dante should have put a layer of hell for property managers. I've changed all my lawyer jokes to property manager jokes. So, some people are high on multifamily. I have a couple of people I know who really big into that space, or they're syndicators, they're investors through syndication, or they teach multifamily. Some people, I know somebody teaches, sort of what you're talking about, build to rent, we actually ended up having a better experience with our single family homes than we had with the small multifamily we bought. Do you do a lot of multifamily? Or are you more of a single family? Do you do a little bit of it all? What is your thought on pluses and minuses for
Mhm.
all those different types of real
Well,
estate.
every strategy, every asset class, they all got their fleas, right? There's not one that's perfect. If you just compared multifamily and single family, I mean, single family, you probably attract a slightly better tenant, but the repair costs get you because it has to be covered by one property. And you go to the multifamily and you probably get a little lower quality tenant, but it's much easier to do the maintenance and stuff because now you can spread the cost across multiple units. I like, what do you call it? The multifamily, because you can kind of force the appreciation on properties. You can get a multiple when it's time to sell. So you can really kind of increase the value that way and do it on purpose and intentionally. But you don't really get, like, if the market goes and blows up, like, you really don't get the benefit of the single family market when you get all that appreciation. So there's pros and cons to both. I like single families just because it's simple. It's just easy. And you can kind of create that multifamily effect as far as the expenses and stuff go if once you start spreading across multiple units. So now I've got 4 or 5 houses in one area, and then that kind of starts to make sense then. But that's just my preference. There's great arguments, and I can't really counter most of them when it comes to multifamily, or when it comes to storage facilities, or it comes to mobile home parks. But they all have their fleas.
Well, I thought, our other business, or our, what we've been doing for 18 years is electing politicians. Our new congressman here, Jefferson Shreve, built his entire wealth on self-storage facilities and sold his company to one of his largest competitors for a very sizable sum of money and funded his campaign for Congress. So I thought, well, that's clearly something that's working, is self-storage. So you're probably right. I mean, there's a strategy for everybody. Mobile home parks, if you can build a true expertise in any of these areas, you can develop an advantage over others, right? And so much potential.
For our listeners, which are majority business owners, that's why we're really excited to chat with you today, Matt, because, again, we pour so much into our businesses, and we're reinvesting in ourselves. And that absolutely is the right thing and is very important. You're not going to know anything as good as you're going to know your own business that you're living and breathing and focusing on. But also for so many of us, we're thinking about, either diversification or a hedge, or, trying to protect your family against something that could happen with your business. And everyone's got a different approach on how to do that. We've interviewed other people that, they want to build your own investment fund that you use for your own business. And there's definitely different approaches. But I think for anybody listening, it's just helpful to consider these things, because for all of us, we need to be weighing that so that we are building a future for our families and making sure that even though we're convinced our businesses are going to succeed and nothing will ever get in the way, it's smart to consider all these various options for how to, again, build wealth and to protect yourself for the long term.
Absolutely. I wanted to, before we get to the final section, we've talked a little bit about some of the themes from the book, but I wanted to circle back on it real quick and just let you kind of make your case. What are some of the top things, top reasons, or top pieces of information somebody would get from reading Escape?
I think the biggest overlying theme of it is when we're all taught when money is going to exchange hands, it's typically a single transaction, right? You're selling something, and you get money for it. And you save your money because you want to, over your time, you're saving money, and hopefully you can create this mountain of money high enough to, at some point when it's time to retire, it'll create a stream of money that can support you for the rest of your life. And that's a 40-year plan for most people if they do it right. I mean, we're seeing people working well into their 70s now, and because they had some bad management or bad guidance, made some bad decisions, or just had some unlucky circumstances hit in their life. And so there was that one commercial, ING. Remember that company? And they'd walk around with the big number under their arm, like, "What's your number? What's your number?" Well, that big number that they're carrying under their arm is how big that mountain has to be for them in order for them to retire in the way that they want to retire. And like I said, that's a 40-year plan. And so if the whole goal is to create this mountain so it creates this stream of money, and that's 40 years, well, let's forget the mountain and just focus on the stream. Because you can create that stream of money in 4 or 5 years and then let the excess from the stream, and then let that build the mountain rather than it being your entire life building the mountain. Does that make sense? So really just every time money crosses hands, every time you're about to do a transaction, just think about, is there a way that I could turn this into a residual income? And most of the time the answer is going to be no, and that's fine. Go ahead and take the money, right? But just ask yourself that question, because if there is a way, then that is going to get you to your financial freedom, your retirement, or your option to retire far faster than it will be you trying to save a giant chunk of money. Because it comes down to most people just don't make enough to save enough for this magic of compound interest to work. And if it does work, 3/4, the best years of your life are behind you now. And I think that's a bad trade. That's a bad exchange. And along the way, for that to work, you have to hope that there was no interruption in that compound. And you have to hope that the fees were minimal, because what the financial planner doesn't tell you is that 1% fee in your mutual fund, that compounds the exact same way that interest compounds. And when it's all said and done, it can account for 30-40% of what that balance would have been, 30 to 40% of what the financial planner said. Look, this is what compound interest is going to do for you at the 6% year over year. After 30 years, you're going to have this much. But then, that 1% fee took a giant axe to the whole darn thing. And so I think that's the big myth is saving money is going to get you to where you want to get, because it's failing, per the Department of Health and Human Services, it's failing 95% of the population. 95% of the population at the age of 65 is not prepared to retire on their own resources.
Well, and I think a lot of people just haven't had the discipline to save. I mean, it's very, very difficult. They're not living on a budget. They're not prioritizing that. And so I definitely agree that it's smart that people don't have to look for get rich quick schemes. They can invest and make a dent, but I also think you shouldn't have to have that mindset that I have to wait and work my whole life and hope for the day that I can retire so I can start finally living my life that I want. So that's the part when you were saying that, I'm like, keep preaching, Matt, because I definitely agree with that. And that's a mindset shift that we don't need to be doing that. We shouldn't be doing that.
Whether we pursue to save our way to retirement or stream our way to retirement, they're both really hard work, right? I'm not saying one's easier than the other, but if they're both hard work, you just get to ask yourself, well, how long do I want to work hard? It can be 40 years the traditional way, or it can be 4 or 5 years just by focusing on streams of money. And that's why Microsoft and Bill Gates is so rich. He just didn't sell anything. He licensed everything. And it's just that if you start looking at all the transactions that you do in your life the same way, you're going to get to where you want to get so much faster, and it'll be kind of boring. It won't feel like it. But when you extrapolate it over the time, it's far faster. And then all of a sudden, now it does feel exciting. As Warren Buffett's saying, right? The best investing is boring.
Yeah.
Boring investing.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, as we come to an end, we take everyone through the same 3 questions as part of our lightning round. We like to do 3 questions, 90 seconds each. First one, what kind of legacy would you like to leave behind from your work at Epic Real Estate?
Well, we talked about it initially. Like I came from a family of civil servants and blue collar workers, and I grew up with that mindset. And not that it's good or bad, I just didn't know any different. But I do have friends and acquaintances who had different family, and they have different way of thinking, and different opportunities open up to them. And a lot of times those opportunities open up to them just because they think differently. And so I kind of wanted to break that branch in my family tree and kind of start a new one, and make sure that my son grows up thinking differently. He can make the choice and do whatever he wants to do, but I want him to have those options.
Now to completely change directions, 90 seconds on anything that's interesting you these days, something that maybe has caught your attention. Could be a hobby, book, sports team you're really into, politics, whatever. 90 seconds on something that you've been obsessing about recently?
Yeah, if you looked at my YouTube home screen, you would know that I am absolutely obsessed with everything artificial intelligence right now. It's moving so fast. And every day there's a new video. I'm like, oh my gosh, everything I learned last week is completely obsolete. And so it's exciting and a little scary at the same time. That's probably why it has so much of my attention. But I think you just need to embrace that. Having been in an industry that was wiped out by technology already, I just kind of feel like, well, I don't want that to happen again. I want to be at the forefront of it. So that's really what I'm obsessed with right now.
Well, you're absolutely right. And we've found all sorts of interesting ways to use AI here. And I'm sure we're only tapping into its potential.
Life is going to look very different in about 10 years, and faster than that even. But yeah,
I think it's 7 or 8 months. Kristen, I think it's 7 or 8 months. It's going to be completely different.
Well, I mean, it's changing all the time, to your point. I mean, just when you learn the new thing that, one of these new AI tools, it's like literally months later and it is multiple times, more advanced or something else. And so I absolutely get that. But I just mean from like a complete takeover of multiple industries. And when you think about how long it took, from printing press to typewriters to personal computers and the rate that now things are developing and advancing, I mean, it is just, it is rapid.
Yeah.
Rapid fire. We're not talking about before, decades or a generation later. It's like, no. In a handful of years, the difference is going to be dramatic.
Yeah. It is moving fast. I love to end with 90 seconds of gratuitous promotion. So, somebody who's maybe interested in learning about real estate or wanting to get into the biz, why would somebody engage with you, and what can you do for them?
Mm-hmm. Well, our typical client is someone that finds themselves at a financial or a career crossroads, and they're kind of like, okay, this isn't working. I need to do something else, even if it's just on the side. That's kind of the ideal person or the typical person that comes and talks to us. So, we show people how to invest in real estate so they can retire early, and they can come to me directly and I can show them how to do it hands-on. So the people that want to get kind of the do-it-yourself type people, that's what I do in our business. My wife, if you don't want to do all the heavy lifting, if you don't really have the desire to learn how to do what we do, she'll actually do it for you. So she has a turnkey operation, and I have the education operation. And so if that sounds like something you want to do, then I would love to talk to you and show you what we do. And maybe if it's a good fit, we'll move forward. If not, we can point you in a direction where it might be a better fit.
I'm sure a lot of people have gotten a lot of benefit from that over the years. And Matt, I'm so thankful that you came and joined us. This is a topic Chris and I are very interested in, and we know it's an important opportunity for a lot of people. And so thanks for joining.
Oh,
yeah. And there's a lot of mystery. There's a lot of mystery out there, a lot of hype, a lot of schemes, and it's just a lot of noise. So you did a great job, I think, of just simplifying everything and just keeping it very straightforward. Again, people, you can get a copy of the book, you can reach out, and just appreciate your very straightforwardness approach, Matt. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Well, to get in touch with Matt, hit him up at www.epicrealestate.com.
Yes. And for those of you tuning in, we thank you for your time. If you found value in this episode, please don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss anything in the future. And again, to learn more about what we're up to, you can visit us at libertyspenders.com. Until next time.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Liberty Spenders Podcast. If you're a business owner, we hope today's conversation gave you valuable insights on how to grow your business.
If you enjoyed the show, do us a favor. Hit like, subscribe, and leave a 5-star review. It really helps us reach more entrepreneurs and leaders like you who are ready to make an impact.
And write something flattering, because I read them all. Don't forget to grab your copy of Liberty Spenders too, available now on Amazon and at libertyspenders.com. It's packed with proven strategies to help you reach the 76.5 million consumers who are looking for brands that share their values.
We'll see you next time as we continue exploring how to grow your business with purpose and conviction.
Thanks for listening. We'll catch you on the next episode and the one after that.